Good afternoon. It's Lee Cassidy from Tactile Technology, and again we've got another one of our in the hot seat. It'll be our last this week. We've struggled to fill tomorrow's slot, which had to be vacated last minute by Sarah Wallace. But we'll see if we can get someone fitted in for tomorrow. But otherwise, we've got Stu Wood to join us from Woodshire. So, hi, how are you, Stu?
I'm very well. I've had a sausage roll. I'm in my happy place.
So you're only happy if you've had a sausage roll?
As long as I've got pork in my life, I'm always a happy boy.
Okay, right. So start us off. Tell us a bit about your background. Where did you grow up? Your parents, what did they do for a living? What did you do as hobbies? What are you going to be as in the future? Train driver, pilot? What were you going to do with yourself?
Oh, my Lord. Okay. This is actually quite ironic because this morning I've updated my CV because we are creating a new arm to the business, and a CV is required for that. And the last time I actually updated that was 2009, to give an example.
A while ago.
But it was actually quite fun to go back and see the stuff that I wrote in 2009 about my career to that point. And it's a bit like looking back at an old photo album, seeing how useless you kind of were when you were younger. So, I mean,
the dodgy trousers, like the flares,
yeah,
and
exactly
things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all the dodgy stuff that you make up on your CV to make yourself sound better.
Tie-dye shirts.
Yeah. And so it's come at a good time actually, because I have been reflecting a little bit today on all the stuff that's happened in my past. But in a nutshell, I grew up in Rubery, south of Birmingham. So I am Brummie born and bred. Can't shift the accent no matter how much I've tried. I went to school as normal. Went through high school in which was Waisley Hills High School in Rubery, which wasn't the best school in the world. But I got an education through it, and then when I came out, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just was just happy being me, and I think that's probably carried on to this day. I did have aspirations to become a graphic designer. When I left school, I went to college and did a GMVQ and a national diploma in design. Oh, excuse me, sorry. The sun's blinding me across the road now. I went to college because I felt like that was the right thing to do at the time. Did some design stuff, and then whilst I was in college, I realised I needed money. So I got a job.
Yeah, it's quite important, money in life, isn't it?
Yeah, especially when you're 17 and you've got friends going out and stuff, and everyone's starting to visit the pubs just before your 18th birthday. And it was vital at that point. My family have a kind of an eclectic mix of backgrounds, and at the time, my then brother-in-law was a financial advisor in Birmingham, and there were some administration jobs going. So I started working part-time as administrator in the centre of Birmingham. And then from that point, I really didn't leave the financial services industry until I started up this company in 2014. Kind of worked my way through
that history in financial services then.
Yeah, that's why my CV is so sparse, really. It's because I left college with some experience in doing design, and then went straight into financial services, which is completely the opposite end of the spectrum. And I just continued doing that. I was kind of institutionalized doing that. I worked for a couple of different firms, but relatively I was kind of doing administration, power planning, and then towards the end of that career, I was doing. I was an insurance advisor. I was specialising in advice on that regards, and that's kind of what led to this business.
What type of insurance?
It was life insurance, either personally or for business owners. At the time, when I was coming to the end, there was a new type of life insurance for business owners that I was specialising in because no advisor wanted to touch it because it was to do with tax. So I started working into that field, but then I was getting frustrated with all the regulation, the exams I was having to do, and the people I was working with, to be bluntly honest. So
it's a very regulated area, isn't it? Yeah, and rightly so. You don't want everybody to be able to do it because there's going to be people going to cut corners and lose people lots of money, isn't it?
Yeah. The ironic thing is, to become a financial advisor, you don't need to be qualified. it's the most heavily regulated industry in the UK, but the people who are actually giving financial advice aren't academics in any way. A lot of them are obviously they take exams and they pass exams to get qualified, but they're nothing like university degrees, etc. They are relatively small and relatively simple exams to pass as well. They're not you don't have to spend 4 or 5 years to become a financial advisor. You can do it in 6 months realistically, but obviously the hard part of it is then industry knowledge, your CPD, and then obviously finding clients that trust somebody who is young and new and doesn't really know about that thing. So it's a very hard industry to kind of break. It's easy to get into, but it's very hard to actually establish yourself because it's something that comes with time and time and age.
So that was all the way through to 2014, did you say, or 2000?
Yeah. So I started in 2002 when I came out of college, and then I carried through to 2014, going through a few different guises, a few different networks, because we went through the recession, which was a fun time for mortgage advisors and advisors in general. And then at the end of that, I just I'd had enough by that point. I'd spent over 10 years doing it, which is quite a long time in anything really. And it wasn't really nurturing me. And also I was crap at it, if I'm honest. I'm not really an administrator. That's something that I've realised over the years as well. And although I'm very good with kind of planning and structure and understanding processes and bits and pieces, actually doing it myself, I was never particularly good at. But that's something that I've learned over quite a long period of time now. I'm grateful that I have learned it in the way that I have. I don't regret anything previously.
Let's go back to that 2008 period then. So how tough was it in the in the finance industry with everything that happened, and what were the different types of impacts sort of felt by you and the companies you worked within?
Yeah, it was, well, we just dropped off a cliff completely. So we were obviously specialising in lending at the time, mortgages, and one day banks were lending and then the next day they weren't. Everything hit the fan. Some big banks, as I'm sure a few people remember, like Northern Rock, disappeared overnight. And how we used to get mortgages for people also changed overnight. So, the risk was always on the advisor in terms of affordability for clients. And then overnight, the banks were like, well, we don't really trust the advisors anymore. They're the ones, they blamed the advisors basically with self-cert mortgages and kind of saying what the affordability for a client is. And quite rightly, really the risk was on the bank, and the affordability check should always have been done with the bank. But that was the nature of the beast in the mid 2000s towards the late 2000s. And so it dropped off a cliff. It wasn't an easy time. And then Lee, me and you go back.
So we met at Malvern House when you were based in office there, don't we?
That was around.
Real lot of fun in that building.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So
wearing the carpet.
Yeah, so we went from having about 16 advisors down to about 3 or 4. And it was a big mixture of the recession, retiring, and just multiple different things that caused it to shrink right down. But the good thing that came out of it, post of it, was to give you an idea. I think there was about 120,000 mortgage advisors in the UK before 2008, and it dropped down to about 30 or 40. So a lot of dead weight had gone. A lot of those kind of sharks and people who are kind of not really giving good service and looking after their clients, or skipping things, or doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. They obviously left or were dismissed. A lot of the banks got rid of their mortgage advisors. So what ended up happening was there were more key advisors who were good at their job left in the industry, and it had to grow from there. And it was called the FSA at the time, and then it became the FCA on April 1st, April Fool's Day, which is ironic. And and then they brought
I was in the RAF, and that was formed on April Fool's Day as well. 1st of April 1918 was the RES formation as well.
It's the financial year, isn't it? That it just ironically sits on April 1st. So what can you do?
I'm not sure the RAF did it for that reason. I think it was just it worked out a good date to do it.
Yeah. Well,
so tell us about 2014 onwards. So what changed? What did you do differently? How have you set up, and why did you do it as well?
So basically, what was happening was I was getting frustrated, and towards the end of my end of my career in the financial services industry. Although ironically, I think we're probably going back into it now. But I kind of realised over the years, one of the biggest drives for me is I got married and I just had a son, and nothing really focuses your mind like having a kid. So I'd realised that I needed to work out what I need to do with my life, and also I want to. It was never really about the money or anything to do with me. It was more to do with who I'm working with and what I'm doing and what I'm good at and what I'm bad at. And over the years, I've watched a lot of business owners and financial advisors do things right, do things wrong. And I did take note of all of that as I was going along. And I've taken good things away from all of that. So in 2014, early 2014, I was thinking about it. And what happened was me and my wife and my son, we went to the Philippines for a month. And whilst we were out there, I was Skyping my father, Paul Wood, who was already specialising in a tax allowance called capital allowances for commercial property. And the company he was working for down south in Kent, they were kind of overstretching themselves, and it was frustrating him. And I was Skyping him, and I said, well, it'd be really cool if we could do something together, because I've always wanted to work directly with Dad. So we said, okay, well, we've got two tax tools here. I've got the insurance tax tool. He's got the property tax tool. I said, why don't we get together and form something new? And if something works, it'd be brilliant. But at least we can say we've tried. So that's what we did. So the 1st of July 2014, we incorporated the company as Woodshires Business Solutions. And I've been trading as Woodshire since 2012. And that's how we started from there. And we realised that we're very, very good at prospecting and finding people, and we understand process. But we're not the experts by any means. We're educators in a way. We're very good at explaining complex tax matters in a nice and simple way for business owners. So that's what we did. We created a business with 2 tax tools to start with, and a couple of client banks, and we approached everybody openly and said, we can help do this, and we can bring in these people to assist in that, and that's how we formulated it. But so from then it's grown in a steady fashion, nothing monstrous. It's been quite linear and nice. We've seen ups and downs during the way. But generally, business has always been good. We've always found good clients. We do good numbers in terms of new clients. Obviously, cash flow goes up and down like every business on the planet. But no, we're still here 7 years on. We've got 14 allowances. We've got an internal team of 5, and then we've got another 5 guys who works for us externally as self-employed consultants. And then we have about 20 to 30 specialists who we refer work onto. In different sectors, depending on the
because you do R&D tax credits as well, which is something that's appeared quite recently, isn't it? It's only been the last, was it 5 or 6 years? That's been a big thing.
Yeah, no, it was actually 2006 it came into the UK.
Ah, longer than I thought. Yeah,
and then I think it was 2012 that it really started, the percentages started rising up. But the thing is with R&Ds, we do a lot of it. We've got really great clients in it, and we've got fantastic specialists in it. But it has become a bit of a tarnished product, especially over the past couple of years. You've got big companies, I won't name names, but there's some big companies who just have big marketing budgets, and they're just marketing the hell out of it, directly contacting everybody, and then just giving really poor service and either massively overestimating what the R&D is worth or massively underestimate what the R&D is worth, and that has kind of put a tarnish on it. But how we get our business, everything is through direct referral. We don't advertise in any way. We just work with professional services, and we kind of look after their clients from being poached by other companies and act on their behalf to make sure that the client's getting the best possible service. And what we do is we mediate. We act as effectively as a broker. But we sit in the middle and go, okay, you, Mr. Client, you're in this sector. You've got these things that we can help you with. This is the right person that you need to be talking to. We'll directly introduce that person to come out and carry the work for you. But yeah, the R&D thing is a fantastic tool. It's going through a bit of a rough time at the moment, purely because there are some big cowboys out there playing around with it. But the HMRC are onto that, and they're starting to investigate a lot of these companies now and force the issue in ensuring that clients are correctly claiming, which hopefully over time, a bit like the financial services going through the recession and regulation changes, will separate some wheat from chaff and hopefully get rid of some of these companies that aren't delivering. So we'll continue working in that area, but we'll probably diversify at the same time as well. Just make sure that we're covering all bases like we always do.
So how has the last 18 months to 2 years been with the pandemic? How has it affected you? How have you overcome any of the obstacles that were created by it?
Yeah, so when it all first kicked off last March, we slashed all our figures. We expected a big drop off, so we were like, okay, we're going to lose a third of our business overnight. We all obviously went home, started working from home. We were doing team meetings together and making sure we were all kind of G'd up and communicating as well as possible. But what happened was it went completely the other way around. We ended up probably doing 200% more than we would do normally. And it's kind of carried on from that point. The last probably 6 months have been quieter for us now that people are starting to return back to normality in a sense.
Yeah,
it's the numbers are still there, and we're still doing well. But yeah, the first 12 months for us, touch wood, it was it went
better than you expected it to.
Yeah, massively, and I think it was purely because we've been around for quite a while now, and we've had many conversations over the years as well. We've got a good 3,500 people on our books. All those conversations that we've had over the years, it became very relevant at the start of the pandemic that people needed cash in the bank. And because of the area in which we work in, which is reliefs and potentially cash rebates as well from HMRC, it then became very relevant to make sure that as a business, our clients were receiving every benefit that they can receive from any location. And we've had some clients that it's kept the lights on for them. Yeah. So yeah, it cash flow wise, it's been better, but it's kind of dropped off a little bit. But in terms of business, it's been buoyant for us over the pandemic period. But yeah, for that reason. So yeah, fingers crossed.
What about this next few months? Do you think you're going to have some challenges because of this new Omicron and how people are starting to go back to work from home, or do you think it actually could have a positive impact on you like it did before?
Yeah, well, the thing is with us, because of the area in which we work in, normally when clients panic, they need more money generally. So then it tends to work in our favour because they end up all phones up going, can you help? Can you help? So in a really kind of sadistic sort of way, it works in our favour when there's issue, but it's not something that we would ever really want to profit from. But it's just the nature of the beast. It's when people, a lot of the time people are very busy, and a lot of these sort of things, especially in tax, which let's be honest is boring, falls to the back of their mind. It's the last thing they want to think about. And then when things start going slightly wrong, it's the first thing that they start thinking about. So then they start contacting us up again. So I suspect over the next 6 months, I think the biggest challenge for us isn't the pandemic. I think the biggest challenge for us is how, especially with R&D specifically, is how people are starting to perceive that, and also the HMRC's view on it as well, and the people that are surrounding that. But we've thought about this in great length, and we are diversifying what we do. Hence why I said we're moving back into financial services, because the plan is that we create our own insurance arm again, looking at the life insurance plans, highly tax efficient life insurance plans for business owners, because again, that's extremely relevant now, just ensuring that all your key people and employees are fully protected to protect the business, but also,
especially in a time like this where we're not quite sure what's going on. If you lost a key person, during the pandemic, and there's more chance of losing them because of, the situation that there's a virus that can, be deadly to some people. It could be quite a challenging time for an organisation. How do you replace someone that's been so key to the business? It's not just the money that you'll need; it's that skill and experience, and they cost money, don't they, to actually recruit someone at the right level?
Yeah, absolutely. That So it's not just the wage; it's also the time, profit loss. How much is it going to cost to replace that person? How long is it going to take for you as a company to get that person back up to the skill set of the person that you potentially lost? And it goes beyond that as well. A lot of business owners don't realise that if you are a shareholder within a company, and one of your other shareholders passes away, where do their shares go? And a lot of business owners presume that the shares come back into the business and then they get divvied out to the other shareholders. But that's not the case. It goes directly to their estate. And then their estate can then potentially have voting rights within the company. One of the voting rights is pay me what I'm owed for these shares. And a lot of companies don't have the liquidity in place to pay off those shares. So, in instances like that, companies close. They phoenix the company effectively. So then everybody loses out. The company loses out because they have to go through that. The estate loses out because they don't get their share value, etc., etc. So it's a key area to a lot of businesses that often gets overlooked by businesses again, because it's not at the forefront of their mind until it is at the forefront of their mind, which is normally when you're
too late.
Too late when you're in a negative position. But so we're branching back into that, and then the stamp duty platform that I've spent a couple of years developing, that's an area that we're shifting a lot of big focus on.
So what does Stamp Check do for people then?
So the fun one with this is, since we incorporated in July 14, we've always assisted mainly developers and high net worths in regards to stamp duty.
Yeah.
And just correctly calculating what the stamp duty payable on a purchase or acquisition is. And what I've realised over the years is that although, high net worths are utilising these reliefs and rebates that are associated with SDLT, Joe Public isn't. And basically what's happened is over the years is that, so this goes back to when I was a financial advisor, SDLT's become more and more complex over time. And the reason it's become more complex over time is because the HMRC have created reliefs that assist in people not overpaying on stamp duty, or looking more favourably on developers to look at sites where they can potentially build new properties because of the housing crisis and shortage. They want to be able to get developers to buy sites or properties or just anything really, to convert it into resi. And they want to give incentive to do that. And one incentive to do that is to make sure that there's no stamp duty to pay on that property or reduced. And the people who pay the stamp duty are the people who are going to live there effectively. So a lot of these reliefs and rebates have come in over the years. I mean, Tories have been in power for far too long now. And one thing they're very, very good at is making tax complicated so that people can exploit that system. But through that, what's happened is nobody's given the answer. So the standard kind of process through a transaction is you speak to your financial advisor, they sort your finances out for you, gets approved, then it goes over to your conveyancer, lawyer, and then they carry out the transaction in terms of doing the legalities of it, the land registry, etc. But one component within all of that process is the tax, which can be a big chunk of money, and nobody takes responsibility for it. So although the lawyer does the return for you, what they don't do is calculate the tax. They do calculate the tax because they go onto the HMRC's calculator, they churns out a number, and then they tell the client that's what the number is, which is tax advice. But their get out of jail is that they say in their initial client pack to the client is we don't give tax advice. We always say that you seek independent tax advice and we'll submit the return for you. But the problem is,
but they're calculating the figure, putting it on the paper, and submitting it for you. So that is tax advice, really, isn't it?
It is tax advice, but obviously their paperwork states that they don't give tax advice. So if the client comes back and says, "I've received tax advice. This is the rate I am going to pay," that the lawyer's happy because it's out of their remit, and then they can just do the returns because the clients receive tax advice on the property. But you only tend to find that in the higher net worths, like I'm saying, but people who are just buying their second property or third property, or if you've got a husband and wife who have split and there's a new person coming onto the deeds and they've got some property in the background, it starts becoming very, very complex at that point. And where do they go?
Should we go through a couple of those scenarios then? So first time purchase, as a purchaser, I'm going to buy a house. The property's worth, so what should we say? £400,000. $250. What's the threshold at the moment? Is it 300? Is it or something like that?
300, yeah.
Yeah, 300. So if it was say £400,000, how do you calculate the stamp duty for that?
Yeah, so the rate's applicable up and above the relief rate. So it's up to £300,000 to £400,000. I believe it's a 5% rate. So yeah, they would pay 5% on £100,000.
On the 100,000. Yeah.
So so those ones are nice and simple. But the complexity comes when somebody's buying a property and it isn't their first house. So it could be their second home. It could be a buy-to-let that they're buying on the side. It could be a property that has some non-residential aspect to it, such as public right-of-way. It could be backing onto a churchyard. It could be backing onto a park. It could be in an area where they have a commercial obligation to maintain something, like a river or a stream, or etc., etc., etc. Those things are not residential, and then they actually change the amount payable on a purchase. And then the 3% surcharge, for example, on a second property purchase. There's about 28 reliefs that are associated with that, which not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, so I would assume if you've not told them it's my second property I'm buying, they're going to put it through at the standard 5% on anything above 300,000 because they don't know, and they're not going to advise you on that.
Yeah, so classic example is this: had a client, Italian chap, purchasing his first home in the UK, £300,000. He's got a property in Italy. When it went through to the solicitor, they asked if you have any other properties in the background. He said yes. And they didn't ask any questions. They were like, okay, it's 3% surcharge. And he was like, and then something that was affordable for him to purchase then became unaffordable for him to purchase. What they didn't ask was, what is the property in Italy? How did you acquire it? How much of it do you own? So he inherited it, and he had two siblings, so he had a brother and a sister, and they had a third each. And because he owned less than 50% of the property, the 3% surcharge didn't apply. But again, it's not the lawyer's job to calculate the tax. It's just they've been lumped with the responsibility of doing it. And that's that. So all of these things, and I mean, I could go on for hours and hours about it, which I'm sure nobody would ever want to hear about. But so stamp check is basically what I wanted to do was create a platform specifically for people at the start of the process. So, financial advisors, accountants, even solicitors as well, if they wanted to use it, but really it's people at the start. So clients get a better understanding of what their tax liability is going to be earlier on in the process, so that comes into their affordability rather than being surprised at the end of the process. So
I'm assuming they go through the process of answering some questions, providing some figures, and at the end of it, it's going to give more of a realistic estimate, I should say. It's not a calculation, an estimate of the stamp duty that should be payable.
Yeah, exactly that. So basically, we've set it up in a really simple way because it's going into financial advisors, and I know exactly what financial advisors are like. They're not the most complex people in the world. So we've set it up as a really simple 17 plus questionnaire, which runs through the relevant questions. And what it does is it generates one of two answers. It says it's a standard transaction. This is what the rate is based on what you've inputted. Print off the PDF, give it to the client, and that's what the rate is. That's completely free. That costs nothing for the advisor, for the client, nothing. Or what it does is it comes through and it says this is a non-standard transaction, and there's a banding rate. It could be as high as or as low as. But now you've got the informed consent with the client to say that they need to get tax advice specifically. Whether they have somebody that they can get tax advice from, or they can utilise our team, of which we've got about 20, 30 CTAs, and they will then pick up the phone to the client, do a full audit, and then they will give them a qualified answer. And that obviously that does cost money, but it's a nominal rate. We've just done it as a flat rate of £300 per $250,000 of purchase price. But when you're talking about saving tens of thousands of pounds in some cases, it's
£300 nothing really, is it?
No, and it's peace of mind as well. So you know that a CTA has picked it up, they've done an audit, they've given you the correct tax rate, and you can take that with you then. So when you sit down with your conveyancer and you get towards the end of the process, you can say, I've received tax advice on this, and the lawyer can turn around and go, brilliant, fantastic. It's no longer my responsibility. Brilliant. So we've spent 2 odd years building it. It was meant to launch a year or so ago, but obviously because of the pandemic and the stamp duty holiday specifically, it has been put back. But one thing that's helped us in that time is that it's helped us hone it a little bit and make it a little bit more accurate. So now, it launched in July, and it's going to a couple of big platforms, big networks. So it's the first of its kind in the UK. So it is new for everybody. So it's been a slow trickle, but it's steadily getting there now. So that's a big area of focus for me, especially.
And if anybody wants to check it out, the links at the bottom of the page. 3wstampcheck.co.uk. Give it a go. See what you think. If you're a financial advisor and you've been interested in using it, a part of your process, all you need to do is go onto the website and also contact Woodshires to actually. Is it direct? Can they actually contact through the Stamp Check website?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's completely free to register and utilise the platform.
Okay.
So as a financial advisor or anybody who wants to use it, you're more than welcome to use it. So the only thing that's payable is when a client actually receives advice. So it's really just, the idea is that if we can get into some big places where there's a lot of advisors sitting there, banks, etc., which is what we're doing, we just create it as part of a standard process. So every single transaction that goes through their process has to go through the calculator. Because then they've got a piece of paper for their compliance file to state that they have told the client that there is a tax liability or isn't a tax liability.
Compliance is such a big area, isn't it? People have got to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So having something part of the workflow process that makes sure they're compliant is a really good thing.
Yeah.
So any future ideas that are going to be started off, or is this? You've got to this point, you're going to grow this part of the business and continue with the existing workloads you've got with the tax pieces.
Yeah, it's never the last idea. No, I've got another one in the background as well. One thing I've realised that I'm good at over the years is getting the right people in the room and hopefully making something happen. So that for me is my biggest kick. I enjoy doing that. I like kind of the structure of formulation of a business, creating business plans, working out what the cash flow forecast is going to be, revenue models, because at the end of the day, creating a business it's the same recipe each time. It's just making sure that you do it right. And most importantly, admitting the fact that you can't do it yourself, getting the right people in the room to work with that are going to be relevant for that specific product is 100% key. And I think there's an art in that, I suppose, in terms of having those conversations and spotting where that person is going to be best fit for that specific project or product. So that is what really gets me going. So no, Woodshire is fantastic, and the idea is that we, or especially me, release control of it, and Helen and Liz, who work for me, they come up and take ownership of it, and I step away and work more on it than in it, which is what I've been trying to do now for the past 18 months.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I'm going to say, I don't know if you're familiar with the Goldman Sachs 10,000 program.
I've heard about it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the key teachings in that, which is like a mini MBA done in about 6 months. I did about 6 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago. And one of the key things is be able to step away. So you're not working in the business, you're working on the business, because you have a different perspective when you're stepping out of it, and you can see it rather than when you're delving in it and working in it. It's a challenge to be able to manage the business when you're fully inside it. So that stepping away is a really good thing to do. And I think the other thing that's really key is looking at what the aim of the business is. What's its mission? How are you going to lead the team if you don't really have a mission? You need to know what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to get there. And those are key things that come from the Goldman Sachs program. And I think it'd be great if you can step away a little bit and have a look at the business, because there's going to be more chance of you growing that business if you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've always been told and learned is always build a business to sell it. Whether you do or not is irregardless, but what you need to do is get yourself into a position where you are not the vital component within that business.
Otherwise, you're not selling the business; you're selling yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if the business is you, then that's a problem. It is a problem. Yeah,
because you can't escape it. You sell it and have to work in it. Yeah, because there's no other way it will work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's at that point it's a management buyout, isn't it? We'll buy it from you. It's going to take 10 years.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay. Yeah, no. So
that's it.
The goal is.
There's no advantage, is there? There's no 12 months on a beach in the sun instead of the 1 month in the beach on the beach in the sun. Yeah. So you need to do that.
It's always that live to work and work to live, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I don't live to work. I work to live a lifestyle that I want. I'd rather be at home with the wife and kids than in work all the time. So it really is about having the flexibility, and especially for me and Dad, because my mother is disabled. She suffers from a Parkinson's disease, and the flexibility for us, especially for Dad, to be able to get home and go home or stay at home when needed, and only work a couple hours a day or however much or however little we need is super important to us. So,
definitely. So I did warn you in advance of this, but we're introducing a new thing at the end of every interview, is that we ask you two things. Tell us about the best meal you've ever had and where it was, but also the most adventurous thing. And you're going off, you've been off to the Far East, so I'm sure there's some adventurous things coming in that piece. But what's the best meal you've ever had and where was it?
Best meal I've ever had. You know what? It's going to sound really, really crap. But I used to go to the Network Q Rally every year. Well, it used to be Network. Now it's just the Welsh Rally GB. And nothing beats being out in the cold in Wales, watching rally cars go past and grabbing yourself a bacon cob. I
knew a bacon cob was coming. It's good that. Yeah.
So,
definitely.
I think like those sort of things kind of stick in my mind more than anything else. I've had amazing meals at Michelin star restaurants and bits and pieces, and although they're fantastic, that doesn't do it for me in terms of memory. Anyway, memory for me, especially with food, are things like that where you were. When I go to the Philippines and stuff, the food over there is incredible. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So something similar to that is, like I said before, I was in the military a long time, but I used to sail quite a bit, and I used to teach at RAF Gosford, and part of each course that came through with us through 93 to 96 when I left, is we used to go down to RAF St Morgan, just near Newquay, and we'd take a 14-foot dinghy, and we'd also take some surf canoes. And we used to stay at the station there, but we used to disappear off every morning very early, about 5-6 o'clock, and we'd be on the beach. We'd set up and we had our ration packs, because we were military, so you get your ration packs, and we'd be cooking up bacon and beans with a hot cup of tea on one of the beaches at Newquay as the sun was rising. So that's definitely a food experience that's a bit different, similar to your nice bacon cob in the cold in Wales watching the rallying.
Yeah.
So
well, I think food is always associated with memories, isn't it? So
yeah.
For me, that was I can taste it. That's the thing. I remember it vividly. And
so what about the adventure then? What's the most adventurous thing you've done?
Oh my God! Well, I suppose that's relative, isn't it, to people's different lives? I mean, going to the Philippines is always adventurous, because especially where I go with my wife as well, because there's not a lot of Westerners there at all. So it can sometimes be a little bit jarring, but it's amazing. Now, I've seen places in the world that not a lot of people, especially people from the UK, have ever seen. But no, I suppose it's when we go to the Philippines, we went a couple of years ago before all this kicked off. We went to an island called Siargao, and the great thing about that place is you can literally just walk onto the beach, talk to one of the fishermen, jump on their little boats with a little engine on the back, and then they'll just take you over to an island that nobody's on. You just pay them, and they'll just sit there and drink with you and eat with you and bits and pieces. So
and fetch you back afterwards, hopefully.
And they do take you back afterwards. Yeah, they're all super, super kind and lovely there. And they'll do anything up and above to.
And so you've got a boy called Wilson with you as well, like cast away on a desert island.
Yeah. Well, it is very, very, very much like that over there. In fact, the beach with Leonardo DiCaprio that was filmed on one of the Philippines islands on Cebu, I believe. One of the Philippines islands. Yeah. So it is exactly like that. You imagine it exactly like you imagine it, but it is a really, really cool place, and so I suppose that's quite adventurous. And then for me, just I like hiking. I like going up Lake District and bits and pieces. I suppose that's quite tame. To be honest, I just go so I can do it.
There are some quite untame areas in the Lake District.
Yeah. So one of my favourite walks is a place called Helvellyn. Yeah. That's quite a challenging walk again. But realistically, it's a 10.
So I'm assuming you've done Scarfell Pike as well.
Yeah.
Because that's quite high, isn't it?
It is quite high.
And looking, you got the tarn at one side, and you're dropping down a cliff the other side. It's quite a long way down, and quite narrow as well in places when you're walking across it. So.
I've done a lot of snowboarding in my time as well. So I've managed to injure myself a few times snowboarding.
Oh dear. Yeah, there are a lot of people that hurt themselves snow. It's not quite as easy as you think, is it? And because both feet are on there, when you come a cropper, there's a good chance you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah. I've had skier's thumb where you land like that, and then your thumb snaps back. So I had to have an operation on my hand for that, and I've done my back in. But I mean, it's brilliant. The biggest advice is drink.
Oh, because the landing's softer, is it, if you've had a skinful?
Yeah. So what we would do is we would always go up, do a run, have a shot of Jaeger, go up, do a run, have a shot of Jaeger, and just continue that until you are literally the best skier / snowboarder on the mountain, in your own opinion, by about 3 o'clock. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Okay. Well, thanks ever so much for joining us today. I've got a couple of little announcements. One that's on the screen at the moment. Next Tuesday, we've got Stephen Miller, who's a Paralympian, MBE, I should say, as well. So he's a 6 times Paralympian. He's been to the Paralympic champion. He's been 3 times. And he's also a founder of an organisation called Smile Through Sport. So join me at 2 o'clock next Tuesday to see that. We're hoping to potentially get someone in for tomorrow. We'll let people know at last last minute. And also we did have an opening for Wednesday next week. But if you're interested in what Stu and Paul, Stu's father, does, look at woodshires.com, and also check out stampcheck.co.uk and get an understanding of that. Also, if you ever want to join us, we've got a couple of banners on the screen with our details. So Rachel and myself, and if you just take down our email address, and if you want to join us in the hot seat and tell us a bit about your life, your adventurous stories, and your best meal, especially if it's in Wales and it involves bacon, let us know, and we can get you sorted out with a slot to do this, because we just want people to be able to understand a bit more about the guests we have on, and also about their business, and be able to promote the business as well. So thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully see you all again soon. And if I don't speak to some of you again soon, have a great Christmas and New Year. So thanks ever so much then, Stu. If you want to hang on afterwards, we'll just have a quick wash up when we've shut the broadcast down.
Lovely.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.